You might have heard this told in a slightly different way in the past, but the version I'm going to tell you is what truly, truly happened. A long time ago, in a town not really too terribly far away from you, there lived a toy maker. He was quite old, and he had a wife, and he had lived most of his life trying to do good things for people, and he had used up most of his money doing nice things for people. Well, this was about the time that toys first started being given to children. Children didn't really used to have very many toys to play with. And toys became a thing, so that this man decided that he wanted to be a toy maker. He just wanted to bring joy to children. So he was learning how to make toys. He wasn't all that good to begin with, so he wasn't really doing very well for a while. Well, he kept trying. One night, he cut out the last scraps of his wood. There were just very little pieces left, but he knew he had enough to make a toy train. He was just exhausted, and he was feeling a little bit dejected, so his wife came to him and she said, "It's all right. I believe in you. I know you can do this. Just leave the things overnight. Get a good night's sleep. Come back tomorrow. You'll feel better, and you can get this made, and it will all work out just fine." So she made him a cup of hot cocoa. She tucked him into bed, and he fell asleep. He slept so soundly that in the morning the sun was up shining brightly before he even woke up again. He went to the kitchen, he got a cup of coffee, he sighed, he ate his oatmeal, a little bit thin, and he put a smile on his face, and he went to his workshop. He went over to the bench where he'd laid out his wood, but it wasn't there. It was gone. He looked around. Oh my goodness, someone must have broken into the shop, so he ran over to the door, and he looked. Well, the door was still locked. Something caught the corner of his eye. Over in the display window. There was nothing in the display window. He had no toys for sale anymore. But he looked over. There, in the window, was the most incredible working toy train he had ever seen. It was painted bright red. It had a shiny brass smokestack, silver on the pistons and the wheels. Oh, the coal car was full of little tiny bits of coal. He looked in the windows. He could see passengers, all of these tiny little people, these dolls dressed up in their Sunday best. Even the dining car, he saw tiny plates of food. He was astonished. He called out to his wife. She came running in. She was looking at it, but she also looked in the window, and she saw that there were customers out there who were looking at that toy train as well. So she opened the door, and 3 couples immediately came in, and they started arguing, haggling, trying to give the best price for that train. Well, the toy maker did end up getting a handsome price for that train, and he did reassure the other 2 couples that he would have something just as good for their families, for their children tomorrow, so to please come back. They closed the door, they locked up, and that toy maker wondered, oh my, how am I going to make something like that just as good? But with his wife's encouragement, he went out. He took the money that he had gotten. He had never made so much money on a toy in his life. He went out and he bought the materials for 3 new toys. He bought the material for a boat, and for a hobby horse, and for, a dollhouse. Again, he cut all 3 pieces out. He left them laying out on the workbench. They sat down to a slightly better dinner that night than they'd had in a few weeks, and he went to bed again. They were both exhausted. Well, Tuesday morning when they woke up and went in, it was there all over again. They saw a full clipper ship with full rigging and sails. It was beautiful. The hobby horse, oh, it rocked so beautifully. Its delicate hair just blew, rippling in the wind when it rocked back and forth on those smooth, smooth, smooth rockers. It was perfection, but that was nothing to the doll mansion. It was 3 stories. Every room had a chandelier, silk drapes, and a beautiful little carpet on the floor. It was the most beautiful, beautiful creation either of them had ever seen. And again, families came in. They bought these toys, they paid amazing prices for them. So they were able to keep this going. Well, this went on this way for several more days. But they started getting just really so surprised. So about a week later, one night, things were really going well. The wife decided she just had to know what was going on. Was he fooling her? Was he tricking her and getting up in the night? So anyway, she got up and she went in the middle of the night over to the curtain. She peeked through the curtain into the wood shop. Gasped. She ran back to the bedroom. Shh, shh. She woke up the husband and she motioned him to come with her, and they crept quietly over to the curtain with one final shh finger to her lips. She opened the curtain a crack and had him peer through. Elves! They saw 3 tiny elves who were working at lightning speed, making the most amazing toys. It looked like they'd been doing this all their lives. It was beautiful to watch them, and the Toymaker watched every magical moment, every hammer stroke, every dab of paint, every blade of the saw blade, every chisel cut. He watched them and watched them, learning everything they were doing. He was in awe. He was so intent, he didn't quite realize that his wife had fallen asleep standing up until she bumped into the curtain. It flickered a bit. They looked. The elves, whoosh, had vanished. They were gone. Well, the next morning, they sat at the breakfast table. A much better breakfast now, ham and eggs, things had been going so well. And they tried to make sense of all of this. Well, what are we going to do, my dear? Well, I have to thank them for something. They have made my life wonderful. They have provided so much for me now. And I have to thank them. I have to do something for them. Well, of course you do. But first, didn't you notice they had no clothes on? They must have been freezing working in that shop. Let me make them some clothes, please. So the Toymaker thought for a moment. Oh, but you know, with elves, fairies, and other fae folk, if we do provide them clothes, the spell is broken, and we might not ever see them again. I know. We know that. But we're doing wonderfully now, and I've been watching you. You have learned so much from studying the toys that they have made. You can handle this. We can do this. Whatever happens now, we can manage this. You're right. We will make that happen. We will give them their freedom to choose what they will do. So the Toymaker went out and he bought yards and yards of the most beautiful green velvet you've ever seen, gold threads, and he brought it back, and his wife sewed all day long. And before midnight, she finished them up. And that night, instead of laying out toy materials, she laid those 3 little coats, hats, and pairs of slippers out on the workbench for the elves. Well, they didn't even try to go to sleep. They were too excited. They stayed behind the curtain. They peered out, and right at the stroke of midnight, a moonbeam shone through the back window, and in slid the elves on that moonbeam. They stopped at the workbench. They looked down, startled, still shocked. They looked around. When they didn't see anyone else in the workshop, they started dancing. They put their clothes on and they pranced and they paraded about. They were so excited they sang a little song. No one could understand the words. It was a wonderful sight to behold. And then they doffed their caps and they bowed very deeply to the curtain in the corner, and they vanished in a twinkling. Well, a year went by. Everything was going well. The shop was bursting with wonderful toys that the Toymaker had made. They had made so much money from this that he was able to give away so many of his toys to children who couldn't afford them. So they were doing wonderfully, and they were bursting at the seams with toys. So as he sat down to breakfast that morning, the Toymaker looked down at the table and noticed a strange note. He picked it up. There was no envelope. It was written in stardust ink. "We love our new clothes so much. We want to thank you. Please come and visit us at our own workshop at the North Pole. Let's have tea and talk." And now, as the man said, you know the rest.